believe America was better 50, 60 years ago than it is now.
Yes, definitely. Are you kidding me? Definitely.
Okay.
You know why? Because after the Civil Rights Act, it wasn't a governmental effort to destroy family. It wasn't. It wasn't from the top down, from the federal government with welfare to get the guy out of the house. Then the guy didn't pay. He goes to jail. He goes to jail.
I think the Gadiant and robbers have been in control for a very long time and have found different methods to manipulate us and have emphasized different methods.
They have, but even from slavery to Reconstruction to any of the time before the Civil Rights Act, we have not had 80% childless or fatherless homes. We have not had that. No matter all the other stuff that happened before the 65 Act, we have not had 80% fatherless homes. We're actually at 90%. We were at 90 before we partnered up with the New Left, as they said in John McWhorter's book, Winning the Race.
I don't really know. I mean, I try to stay away from stats if we don't have
80%.
You know, it's hard to know.
80%, dog. No, I do know 80% because I see my brothers getting shot in the fucking back.
I know, but
I see that stuff. It matters. I've seen that community consistent. Yes, it is. It's done by blackpeople.com and it's done by the CDC. 80%, dog. 80% of childless homes. It started in 65. Most people don't know this. That's why they go, oh, maybe the Dems are okay.
Wait, are you saying in the black community or the American at large?
In the black community.
Okay.
Consistently. And then we look at, it's an 80% chance if this whole room with black guys right now, that we'd have an 80% chance of being shot. That's what's happened now. They've systematically went in a way to destroy families, which they hadn't done before, and we voted for it because we sat there and like, yay, thumbs up to the system.
So, I mean, I hate to be this guy to say it, but we had probably higher fatherless homes and the African American community.
No.
They separated
we didn't. No, we didn't.
Pre the Civil Rights Act, it was like in the 80s or 90s.
90%,
they
homie.
separated all the families.
No, they did not.
No,
it was only during slavery.
That's what I'm saying.
But after slavery, it was 90%, my friend, because of that.
So when did America become good, and then when did it fall?
Good. America's always been a fallen place, but it's been better than every other country ever existed. That's just the history. Name a country. Name a country. Please.
We don't have time.
No, you don't have one. You don't have one.
I don't have to open this rabbit hole, but
but you don't have one.
Bust it out. Answer the
you
question.
You don't have one. They don't have one.
One.
There is no country. There is no.
We are very similar to ancient Rome.
Name one. No, name a country.
We're literally on par with ancient Rome.
Name a country. Don't go now to ancient Rome because you said countries.
Well, you're on par with ancient Rome.
You're changing the subject.
Name a country.
Hold on,
let me finish. It's 2 versus 1. Let me finish.
No, but you asked a question. You asked him, is there a better country?
No, I asked him that, but he said
me that. Let me finish.
Yeah, let him finish that Rome.
What I'm saying is, we do this all the time. We go, is there a better country? We haven't lived in every country from the beginning of the history of the world.
No, but
we can look at who we're on par with.
Yeah, we can.
We're on par with Rome and Greece, and they were corrupt from the beginning.
No, they weren't.
Corrupt from the beginning, just like Wilford Woodruff said.
But that's human.
Jesus is not proud of the country.
Yeah, so name a country then that wasn't corrupt from the beginning. Then name one better than the United States.
That's my point.
So name one better than the United States.
They're all bad.
No, they're not all bad.
Yes, they are.
Oh, wow.
We're all bad.
If we're all bad, then all the things you're talking about, the fact that we can go to the moon, the fact that most people are reading, the fact that most people in human history have made more economic gains than any other time in history right here. So that
the glory for ourselves and not God. There's not one righteous. That's what Jesus says.
There's nothing. It's not about righteousness.
No, but getting to the moon is an American achievement.
We'll say what again?
Getting to the moon inherently is not an American achievement. It's an achievement of God's divinity onto those.
And what country had God as the forefront, and Inception was built on the fact that God was in His Constitution? Which
really
one?
Yes,
it does. So no, it doesn't matter. The Constitution. There is no Constitution built on the fact of the Bible. There is no outside of the United States. How long is the United States Constitution compared to the rest of the world? The average world Constitution is 17 years. The United States has been 240, meaning that it hasn't broken.
It wasn't working very well for a long time.
It wasn't working, but it didn't. No one had to switch it up. Average Constitution of countries around the world has been 17 years.
That's not
meaning there's been meanings. It doesn't have to be because you didn't live there and go through the Civil War and go through because 17 years for the average countries in the world, in the modern world, 17 years. That means blood and war in those 17 years.
But if we weren't following it, why is that impressive?
We are following it.
If we weren't, is what I said.
We have been following it. That's why it hasn't. In 17 years, that's why the country didn't destroy itself. In another 17 years, that's why the country didn't destroy itself. In another 17 years, that's why it didn't. When you had France do it and bloodied
You would be
Francis
hard
wanted to
pressed
butt it.
to find any historian who believes that America was following its constitution since the inception of our nation. We have not.
It's been following it compared to other countries.
It took 19 amendments for women to be able to
Compared,
vote.
I don't care. I don't care. Has that helped us? But when we were saying compared to other countries,
hold on. He's making an argument.
you're missing the point. You're missing the point.
You're saying we're better than other countries because of the Constitution.
Than the history, or no?
The
fact is we're founded. The fact that we're founded on God and the Bible. That's why we're better.
That's
the fact that the first.
Says.
The Vatican say whatever they want. Yeah, so I said name one country that's better than the United States, and go ahead. You can't.
You're missing what I'm saying.
You can't.
I don't.
You said you can't. I'm saying it's founded on God. It's founded on the Bible. That's why it's better. Because you haven't lived anywhere. You haven't seen it. That's why you say that, and that happens to most people who haven't gotten outside of America.
I think
that's what happens to most people who haven't gotten outside. Where would you go? Where would you go? Tell me, where would you go? Where would you go?
I disagree.
You can't. So I'm just going to say it's bad. This is a very lefty argument. I'm just going to say it's bad, but I'm not going to say anything better. I don't have any type of.
I don't believe in the idolatry that you're pushing.
Okay, but you don't have anything better than what I'm saying.
It's a
so when you're saying, which is still better than any other country on the planet. That's the point.
I don't think so.
Then tell me which planet. Tell me which country. You can't. You can't. Tell me.
Okay, the Czech Republic did not murder millions of Indians.
The Czech Republic is better than the United States. The Czech Republic, which is poor, is worse than the United States.
Standard you have
yes,
said.
which country is better?
I would rather be.
You'd rather be a Czech in the Czech Republic. So I can go by the history of the Czech Republic.
You said the murder of the pigs and the murder and the murder mills are horrible.
Yes.
So if we have had our murder mills, then why are we better than countries that don't have a murder mill?
Tell me which country is better. No. Tell me which country is better. And I'll tell you why it's not better. That's the difference. You can't tell me because you have no standard.
That's why I don't.
Can I give you guys?
I have a standard.
I've got a country.
Yeah, go
at
ahead.
least a city. I've got a country. At least a city.
He's going to say Enoch.
Zion. Yeah, exactly. I see where Kwaku's coming from. I understand where you're saying,
we are
like,
modern
hey,
Babylon. We have been since our inception. This is what I'm saying.
That's not true. It's 13 colonies of 3% of people fought the biggest nation and empire in the world. What are you talking about?
They were evil too.
What are you? You said we're modern Babylon since we started. Modern Babylon was basically the empire of the whole area. United States has never been that till after World War II. Know your history. After we made the deal with Europe in order to even go into the European theater to make our dollar the number one there. That's when we started becoming financially number one. You need to know your number.
Kwaku, very clear.
Hold on.
The Lord already condemned half of our country.
Hold on here. Kwaku.
Yes.
I find it outlandish and unsupportable. Okay, I find it outlandish and unsupportable to say that from its inception that the United States of America has been just as bad as the empires it fought. There's a reason why the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was restored in America. The religious freedoms.
There's a reason we left.
No.
To start
See, there it is. This nihilistic.
Hold on.
It's a very
this is the weaponization of empathy that we're talking about.
Yep.
No,
hold on.
I'm not far left liberal. I'm my own
I'm not
thing.
saying,
But you're playing into the game very easily.
because
you're not giving
the
credit to
language
where
of the
credit's due.
oppressors, like you say yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, is that just because I say that guy's a bad person over there, we can't just say, oh, well, because bad people exist in the world, we can't indict this one.
Yeah.
No.
That's
it's
crazy.
okay to claim America is the best because that doesn't mean it's flawless.
I don't think unless we have lived in each country.
There we go.
Then we can say that.
Dude, I grew up with this leftist ideology, and the problem that what you're saying.
Never imagine
the
Jesus
problem
saying
that you're
America's
saying
the best country in the world.
I'm not Jesus, but I can go. And I never tried to be Jesus.
That's the point.
I never tried to be
It's a
Jesus.
religious show.
No,
What would Christ say?
But that's Christ. Let him say that. But what I can say,
Christ called Herod.
empirically, I can look at the history of the world and go, what has been established in this country has never been done before. Number one. Number two, because it's never been done before, it has offered more people the ability to not have to be beholden to one person, i.e. emperor, or i.e. church, or even i.e. some type of lord looking over them. This place is the only place established like that, my man, in the history of the world. It's the only place in its law established like that. Please name one, which you haven't
We're literally
yet.
owned by corporations and oligarchs.
I have a question.
I said oh my goodness, you're missing.
I want to see
what you're giving me is liberal arguments I went to school to talk about, and you keep going. But yes, you are. You're saying we're owned by oligarchs. I go, the establishment of this country, we the people on the books, whether people go through and follow through is different.
I care about the reality. It's not on the.
Okay, so then the Bible doesn't count. That the Bible doesn't count because the Bible, the Word of God, is in the Bible. That's what we go on, not by the preacher who is flawed.
All the books of what we say we do and what we actually do are different. J.P. Morgan, way back in the day, was calling shots very, very
in the 1800s. That's not 1776, my man. You got to know your history.
Years later,
100 years later is not a big deal.
1776 was a lot better with the.
It's not a big deal.
The murder of millions of Indians.
It's not the big deal. The murder of millions in Indians didn't happen in 1776.
Oh, it started
my
in
friend.
the 1500s. What do you?
No, it didn't. It wasn't.
In the 1300s.
It was a battle between two opposing sides. The murder. It was a war. There was. You've heard of the Sioux Nation? You've heard of nations? They had their own million individual communities.
Yeah, why do we get involved?
These were two opposing armies going at it, man. Stop falling for this stuff because this is where we got lost.
We got involved and we killed people.
People kill people in war. That's what happens when you take over land.
Yeah,
why do we all of a sudden go, well, the Indians died, so now we got to cry about it? We can go to every country you can name that you can't name.
That's my point.
But what we've done every point is we get better, and we have to acknowledge the strength of that, because if we keep acknowledging that we were bad only, that's all we sit, and that's a leftist ideology.
We've been bad since day one.
No, we have not just been bad. No, but we've been human since day one. Yes. And humans have been good and bad.
So what is
but this has been the best.
Saying that we're better
this has been better than any
bad?
other time. No, we're not just as bad. That's the difference, man.
We've been prideful, arrogant, and murderous since.
And no country has offered the individual that godly freedom that the Bible has in its laws. No country has offered that.
To say we've been prideful, arrogant, and murderous since day one,
it's a lie.
I can't. George Washington is the only person whose people that I name another person whose people literally offered him kingship. And he said, no, that goes against our values. Freed his own indentured servant class and gave the Congress that would develop the Constitution that he inspired the power to run what should have been his kingship.
Kingdom.
That is the antithesis of murderous, idolatrous, and evil. And
especially for the time, the time was not that.
Like I've been, and see, this is where I struggle, because I've been in a lawsuit against the U.S. government that made it to the Supreme Court. I've actually experienced a civil rights abuse from the U.S. government.
Same here.
The sheriffs actually came and took me and my sister away from my parents for a crime they were found factually innocent of, and they did not commit. And they put them on a list, which is why I'm not comfortable with lists, okay? Yeah. They put them on a list that took them like 14 years to get off of, even though they were found factually innocent. So I, having actually been a victim of a civil rights abuse here, recognize, yeah, that's the fallen and even worse as it got closer to the European model U.S. government of 2001 to 2015, not our established foundational values. So yes, that civil rights lawsuit against me put a nick on the evil U.S. scoreboard that Kwaku talks about. But you can't step back and look at the scoreboard and say, yeah, the U.S. didn't do the Holodomor, and it doesn't have a foundation for what was pulled off in China. And when
the Old Testament says repeatedly that the false gods are the rulers of the nations, it's hard not to. I'm sorry, I don't have this George Washington worship and this.
No,
you study? It's not a worship. That's the thing you're missing. It's not a worship. You don't think they're that great because you don't understand. No, that's the thing. When people say this, because they don't understand what was going on and what is offered around the world.
No,
Liberia, where my family's from,
disagree.
You don't understand because you don't see the value.
I don't think you're right, though.
But here's the perfect example. Answer me this.
But it's still better than.
Hold on.
It's still better than.
Answer me
you
this.
do not want to be in Liberia 10 years ago, homie. And that's a democracy, and that's a place that was established on close to that, and that was 20 years. That was a 20-year.
Hold on. Here's the question.
Says we're better than every country.
But they're not, and I can tell you why. You can't tell me a better country than America. You can't. But he can't though. That's what I'm saying. If you can tell me a country better.
Hold on. None of these guys can. Nobody can hear you. I literally silenced you both because we need to ask this question. I do believe one of the easiest ways. Now we're all back on. I do believe one of the easiest ways to prove that American exceptionalism, by the way, exceptionalism is not perfection. We're making the exceptionalist argument here. Name another country that would permit us to have this show in which we are drastically criticizing a nationwide church and a nationwide government. where both our religious freedom and our religious speech is being exercised by free citizens who have no power or army to criticize the religious leaders and the political leaders who have an entire army. Name another place where we could record this show and you could say
Without
what
the
you
threat.
said
Without even a
without the threat of reprisal from the government.
Switzerland.
Canada.
Belgium.
Canada?
Ireland.
Until a few
literally
weeks
arresting
ago.
its own citizens
Until a
right
few
now.
weeks ago.
Ireland.
No.
What are you talking about?
No. You know why?
Greenland.
For
What are you talking about?
250 years straight?
Yeah, no. You know why?
We've lost a lot of our values and we've lost a lot of our rights.
I don't disagree with that. But what I'm saying is,
No, they
I
haven't.
think it is an idolatrous practice that we have
40
been doing
years
in
ago,
our
they
country.
were bombing you for your religious ideas. Look up the troubles in Ireland.
Yeah.
You were
Can I
literally,
ask
your
a
building
question
was
real quick here?
bombed if you were Protestant.
Yep.
Can I throw in a question?
We've done worse and we've done more.
Well, yeah, but once again,
40 years
this,
ago.
we've done worse. Like one
MK
time,
Ultra recently.
if we adopted your approach, you could never
the
hold a
leftist
man.
ideology.
You could never hold a man accountable for his
Can I-
sins.
It's
because
Can I ask you a
other
question?
sins
This is
exist
not
elsewhere.
leftist. This is
No, it is
Talmudic ideology.
This is leftist ideology because I
not.
grew up in it. It's growing up to not understand that there is something value about the United States that we have to hold on to. This is why we're
You can
sitting in
appreciate the
this place
value
now.
without being an
No,
idolater.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
Yes,
You're
you
not.
can.
Because you're not.
You just said you can't
just
appreciate
said
the value of
worship.
being an idolater.
No, you just said I don't worship George Washington. You don't even know him enough to
I use
understand
worship,
his level.
quote, unquote,
Okay,
George
but you don't
Washington.
even know enough of what he did to give him his just deserves.
Of course I do.
No, okay. Then how
we
can
grew
you?
up in this-
How
I
can
don't
you not
think he's
say-
that
Then what
good.
are
You
his
said,
just
I don't
deserves?
think he's
I
that
think
good. Wait,
any
wait, wait,
human
wait. You said I don't think he's that good. He just told you what he turned down in the time when there were nothing but God kings to a certain extent.
Okay,
how
fine.
can you not?
He's
say
a human
someone-
trafficker.
Wow. And this is the leftist ideology.
That's not leftist.
This
He
is
owned
leftist.
people.
This
That's
is
been a
leftist.
sin since day
That
one.
is- that
It's
is
been a sin
leftist.
since day one.
That is
It is
leftist.
not right that any man should be in bondage one to another.
That
That's
is-
the
that is-
words of the Lord in our scripture. He knew the
That
Ten
is
Commandments.
leftist.
He decided not to follow it.
Okay,
He owned
my
people.
only
It is
fear of
He
that,
trafficked
Kwaku-
in human beings.
Okay, you know
I
what?
don't think he was a
Yes.
good
That's
person.
what everyone
Hold
did.
on.
Everyone
All
of
bad.
power.
Wait, but then Kwaku.
bad.
Kwaku, we literally.
They were all doing it in Sodom and
but
Gomorrah
hold on.
too. It was still
Kwaku,
bad.
Stop for a second. We need to come back down to reality for a second. Yes, it's well known many of the founding fathers had slaves, right? But George Washington notoriously, upon racking his brain as part of the founding of this country to say what is the best political system, because it was about a 25-year process,
Yep.
getting the Constitution and all of the founding documents done, realized the moral evil and showing by example that he thought slavery was wrong, freed his own slaves,
When?
and then exhorted.
When did you do it?
It doesn't matter. This is literally leftist stuff
it's
right
not.
now. Yes,
It's
it
not.
is. All
The
leftists
human-
say
human
that.
behavior, man.
All leftists
Well,
say
no,
it.
no,
All
hold on.
leftists
No,
say
you're
it.
distracting.
They
We're
do.
making a
They do.
clown show out of
Yeah.
this because I'm asking a question here. My problem with modern leftist secularism and why I think it brainwashes Christians
Yep.
into no longer being Christians is because it takes out the redemption narrative.
Yep.
Is there no historical figure? This is a presentist argument. Is there no historical figure that can engage in a great moral evil, such as Moses' murder? Moses murdered a guy. You, with your kind of ideology, you could say, I believe murdering is wrong. Moses murdered an Egyptian. Therefore, the whole Pentateuch and the entire 5 books of
Baby's
Moses
out
that he
the
wrote and
bathwater.
everything afterwards is null and void because he murdered a man. That's no different
The
than
redemption
saying,
narrative was that he then led his people to freedom. That's the beauty of the story.
Well,
He
and-
started off bad and he did
and
that.
George Washington literally made the first country that
gave you
enshrined for
religious
250 years
Religious rights.
religious freedom that
first
allowed the
own-
church to be
Then
founded.
why does the Lord say the opposite in our scriptures, Cardin?
What is the opposite?
That we shouldn't be a
All-
country that
we have-
protects religious
we have-
rights.
No, hold
we-
on. Let
we
him
have
say. Let
extra
him say his
scripture.
piece. Let him say his
The
piece.
Doctrine and Covenants, over and over again, the Lord is condemning the United States. He condemns the South. I'm going to destroy it. He condemns the United States over and over again.
Yeah,
the
for
Sunset
specific
Revelation,
sins, just
Arizona
like he did
Revelation,
Israel.
to Wilbur Woodruff, over and over again. So I am confused as to why. You look at Joseph and Brigham and what they thought about the United States, and they were saying it was modern Babylon, so corrupt and evil, and we had
because
to
they
leave.
did evil things to the early pioneers.
So we did
and
not believe in our
That
own
doesn't mean
religious.
it is irredeemable and worse
I
than
never
the
said
competition.
that. I never said that.
Well, you said we've been evil.
So I think we're crossing hairs here. Can I
Said
check
we've been
something?
fallen.
Yeah.
yes.
What I want to see is I think Kwaku, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're trying to say that yes, the United States is it has good things about it, but it also has bad, and we need to acknowledge those so we can learn from them.
I'm not hearing that. He's literally saying it's been evil from its inception.
Yeah.
But I think Kwaku's only saying that.
Idolatrous.
What he's saying. Let's go by his words.
I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that from Kwaku in reaction to the idea that I don't think is what you guys are saying either, but it's coming across as America is the ideal, right?
No,
which I think America is.
There is no ideal in a fallen world.
No.
Yeah, which I think is what Kwaku's trying to say.
We're the closest humanity has come, and that is the birthplace of the American exceptionalism argument. And in order to preserve that exceptionalism, Siaka is saying that there are certain religious freedoms, verbal freedoms, and Bill of Rights freedoms that need to be preserved that are under threat from the leftist secularist movement. Therefore, he questions whether or not you can be a knowledgeable and in the know Christian and be a leftist secularist, i.e. a Democrat, nowadays in 2021.
But it's all the fact that in the history of the world, again, no country, whether they've achieved it or not, that's not what we're talking about. It's about what's in the law. It's why we believe, many Christians believe their religion is the best religion, is because it's what they believe what to aspire to be of the religion. You're trying to be like Jesus, but we falter.
And I think the application of our laws matter more. And if we have,
the Constitution.
Wait, but hold on. Let him finish, Siaka. Let Kwaku finish.
I don't think
you think that the application of our laws matter more. Elaborate.
Right. You could have the most beautiful books on the law. You could have it could be perfect, but if you're not following it, it doesn't matter. And I don't think we've adequately followed what we've said, which is why the Lord has condemned us. And I think it's a form of idolatry to say, yes, we're bad, but we're better than everyone else. That's literally how that's how the idolatry worked in the Old Testament. They brought their statues in and they carved them and said, this is the closest we're going to get to the best.
So I want to make sure I understand you correctly. So you're saying that, everybody writes down a constitution, and Kwaku has a good point here. People don't realize it, but the USSR had an almost equal Bill of Rights that enshrined religious freedom and freedom of speech and all that stuff on paper. But as we know, if you spoke out against the Soviets, the Stasi came in and you were disappeared. Okay. Right. So I think what you're saying is the practical application is almost more important than what the original book says, because everybody's got pretty books. Right. Okay. Which I agree with. So let's analyze America in the lens of, has it lived up to its values? There's times when it hasn't, such as during the early persecution of the saints, during Buchanan's blunder, where he actually sent out an army to go quell a Mormon rebellion that didn't exist. And fortunately, because of Jonathan Browning, we had so many guns that when the army showed up, they realized, these guys are more locked and loaded than we are, so we're going back. Yeah. And the U.S. government was made to look like a fool. However, there's been other times where the U.S. government has bailed out members of our church in a very noble way, such as times when mafiosos have kidnapped missionaries. Yeah. There's been widespread horrible calamities, and they've needed to get members out of bad situations.
Here's the biggest thing. The establishment of the Mormon church, that story you just told, it could have only happened here in the United States in the way that it happened. Everywhere else, they would have brought out their army to come and take it out. That's what I mean when I talk about this is what has been established, the greatest country, because no other country starts from the people first. Application, then you can say every Christian then is fallen and every Christian is not living, because the application of the law, we're not following it. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Like what Christian is following it? Nobody.
Yeah.
So then to say that the country,
the Old Testament though gives a very clear delineation between like godly countries and they make the running of a system very different than
I get that, but hold on a second, Siaka. Let's take a look at your word though, godly. And the reason why I say, and I agree with Siaka more on this about American exceptionalism, is because the reason our Constitution has lasted those 250 years, while the average secular Constitution only lasts 17 is because ours is the only Constitution, besides some small country elsewhere, some historical empire that lasted 5 minutes, okay? Ours is the only Constitution that starts out saying these inalienable rights don't come from this government, which can be overthrown through violence, but through God. Mm-hmm. And these are inalienable rights that, by the way, are self-evident. they're so strong and obvious that they are self-evident. And if you want to fight against those rights and take them away, A, you can't because they're natural. They come from God. But B, you're not God and you can't touch God. So the fact that we say that our rights come from God
No other country
has been the strength of the Constitution. And if we want to go back to being strong and living out our values more, because honestly, when we were more godly, when we were more Christian as a country, we weren't doing the drone striking. Honestly, the political horror and evil that you constantly mention of drone striking, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the political and child evil of. So, I mean,
if we had the technology, I think we probably would have done it.
probably. Yeah, man.
if we had the technology,
So that's a conversation that cannot even be like tested at all.
Yeah.
So I think that ultimately what I see from both of you guys, from both sides of the conversation here, is look, we need to do what we can to strive for what God would have us be doing, right? Would you
But
guys
I
all
would
agree
say-
on that?
I would say we have to strive for the word, right? And God specifically, Jesus Christ, what Jesus was talking about, right?
Yeah.
He's talking about love God with all your heart and soul and love me. That's what we are. And what is that? At least for me, I use the Old Testament as a guidebook to go, what are some of the things God's telling me that will help you as a man just live a better life? Then you spread that out from yourself to your community to your nation. And I think too many of us aren't starting with ourselves and then spreading it to community. So
Yeah.
it's not
And I
getting
think
to the
you
community
meant to
then
say
go to
you
the-
read the Old Testament and then try and spread that. Because if you read the New Testament and try and spread that. Because if you're trying to spread the Old Testament, there's lots of weird stuff.
No,
man.
I go through the Old Testament. The Old Testament is examples of places like Babylon and seeing kind of the examples of the fall of man and seeing the cycle, right? So you start to see kind of the patterns of things.
Modern day Hagar would be a really weird thing to spread in the local
no,
congregation.
No. Hey guys, not at all. So I find it that like that just gives you like reference points to like, hey, if you don't live this way, right? Romans is big on that. If you don't live this way, look what you can see. And it's and to me, Jesus makes it very simple. I think too many of us haven't started within to do the work and then look outside our community to work from there. And then let's see what happens after that second
Okay,
step.
close us out here,
'cause-
Brad. Close us out.
I just think
Well,
that
everybody's
Kwaku's got
going to
a
get their final thoughts.
Yeah, I think that Kwaku's got a real point here that if we allow ourselves to be worshiping these lesser things, that's when we're going to get ourselves into trouble, right? Of
course.
When we're going to be falling short of what God wants us to be doing. So we need to make sure that God is our standard,
Yes.
not something else.
Yes.
That's
And
fair.
so I think that is what we need to be doing politically and in our own personal lives. And like Siaka was saying, I love that. You start with yourself and then your family and
Which
then
means
go
you
out to your
can't vote
community.
Democrat. Good job. So Kwaku. Kwaku's next.
No. One more thing, Carden. One final thing. You gotta just when you look at the two great commandments, right? To love God and love your neighbor. You got to make sure that you don't let one of those just overcome the other, right?
Yeah.
You can't forget God just so you can love your neighbor and then end up because I feel like that's what I see a lot of nowadays.
Yeah.
Is people are forgetting to love God in an effort to love their neighbor when really you need to be doing both.
Or
And
we
God
could,
comes
we-
first. God has to come first every time.
Or also, I see this on both sides. And if there is a criticism that I have of generally justice-minded, well-educated in history, right-wingers, as Kwaku likes to call them, is you can't, like, mercy never robbed justice. Okay? And oftentimes, in an attempt to create justice in a situation, it's easy to overlook mercy. And it's also easy in a process of trying to disagree and argue with somebody about something to forget their humanity, vilify them, otherize them, and then, say crazy things like you can't be a member of our church if you think X, Y, or Z way without allowing them a chance to explain that, you know what I'm saying, belief structure. So I agree. That's a very easy trap to fall into as well. Kwaku, your turn.
Yes,
Cool
you can be a
Def Leppard
Democrat.
shirt.
Thank you. You can be a Democrat. You can be a Christian. We can't. I don't have the ability to judge one's soul or testimony. Only the Lord can do that. And whatever blessings God has given the country, it seems very clear that America has taken the honor unto themselves and has built false gods unto themselves, as opposed to giving the honor back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is why we're in the place that we are. I don't think that we are. I think it's a form of idolatry to look at how faulty we are, but say we're still the best example, because that's literally what the idolaters did. And
Because pride is a sin of comparison, you're saying.
That's one example. And I think we would be much better off if we decided to stop identify, because ultimately Christ is going to come to destroy all the nations and all the borders and all the governments. And so if we stop,
and he won't be filtering out the Republicans from the chaff. I'm sorry, the Democrats from the wheat. Sorry, I forgot. You're right. He won't be coming with an R and a D behind his name.
I'm not a prophet, but I can promise you this: whether you're a Republican or a Democrat means nothing to Jesus. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, wait, but before you finish that though, really though, if with his perfect knowledge,
I think he would say, "It mattereth not to me." I think that's what he would say.
Okay, but do you really think somebody who supported those that threw... do you really think, for example, the Roman that stood before God and said, "Surely we hath killed the Son of God," that has a moment of inner contemplation and recognizes the grandeur of God, will be in the same spot as the Roman soldier that said, "I was just obeying orders and I just smote off the head of John the Baptist"?
The whole point of that story is that that example was the heart, the example of the heart, and that.
Well, yeah, I think the heart is different.
He's not going to care about the piece of paper where you bubbled in Republican or Democrat in 26. I don't think it's going to matter. It's going to that's going to be a tiny.
But I think you're missing. But
a glitter.
But I think it's missing. What he's trying to say is that then the heart of what tends to be the heart of the left, more times not based on the ideology, is antithetical to God.
No,
so
what I understand that.
So I think that's what he's saying about, like, that's the difference, right? It's like the heart of the Democrat, maybe.
Well, the heart of each person individually. Is what I'm saying. Yeah.
But also, like, a bitter font cannot bring forth sweet water, and a sweet font cannot bring forth bitter water. If the fruits, meaning the policy of that governmental system, is bringing forth bitter water, such as genocide, the Holocaust, the Holodomor, mass starvation. If these are all the very bitter fruits of this political ideology, you have to start analyzing the font from which forth they spring.
No, I agree.
Which is the beliefs and the heart of the people that are running and participating in the system. And we have a blessing as Americans of having one chess move on a board with 50 billion people, but we have our one chess move, which is our one vote. So if we choose to be with the bad guy in the Mummy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a reason why the bad guy in the Mummy ended up getting eaten by all the scarab beetles, because his heart was in the wrong place, because he chose to side with evil instead of having the guts to stand up against it.
Yeah.
And on this show, we've talked about, for example, Helmuth Huebner, you know what I'm saying, who, you may not realize this, Siaka, but a member of our church, was the youngest person ever persecuted by the Third Reich. And he had opposed members of his church who were buying in to the Nazis, saying that Jews were lesser and were not allowed in his church. And he translated French and Allied materials from shortwave radios and disseminated them. He was 17 years old. So when he got arrested, the Third Reich actually allowed his civil rights to be taken away that were protected as a minor, so he could be tried as an adult, and he was starved and exposed before he was executed as like a 16 or 17-year-old boy.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? For what he did. He's a freaking stud, right? So his heart, for example, I think God's going to look at that and be like, okay, that's a lot better. So I don't know. To me,
that's him as a person that was impressive. It doesn't matter the political party.
No. He's saying the ideology someone supports in that political party is ultimately guiding their heart. Yeah, because if they believe, like,
I think it's the heart's guiding their ideology.
Can you be a person that's good and believes in freedom, but then holds slaves, Kwaku, and then God will say, the slave holders, their hearts were good.
He's gonna judge them. Your heart drives your ideology. You often find that people who So
if you're a good Christian, your heart drives your ideology.
Like David.
Could you continually, despite knowing it's incorrect, could you continually harbor slaves in 16th century Florida?
No, with a couple of exceptions, though. Right.
Well, that's what we're saying.
Right. So
Is they no, with a couple of exceptions. So when somebody says, "Can you be a Christian and a Democrat at the same time?" We're saying the exact same thing.
I'm saying
no,
yes.
with a couple of exceptions.
I'm saying yeah.
You're saying yes.
Yeah. Because you gave an example of of something that's not salvific. We're talking about actual salvation.
What's salvific? Sorry.
Well, you saying
something
owning a slave is not, you can't be, there's no salvation for that?
Well, I mean,
Was it the slave point is what you're going
well,
with
yeah,
that?
no. You're saying, okay,
Well, if
can
you're
you be a
saying-
Christian and be a Democrat is a salvific question. Can you be a good person and a slave owner is not a salvific question. One's dealing with the nature of actually being saved. The other's a question of
just the
general
individual.
social
Well,
morality.
can you be I guess then the question is, can you be a Christian to be a slave owner? Right? Isn't that the
Yeah,
question?
fine. I don't
To
think
to make it apples to apples.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why Christians for so long bent over backwards trying to justify slavery through this curse of Cain doctrine, because all the other verses made it plainly obvious what they were doing was wrong.
Yeah.
So they did mental gymnastics for 250 years.
I agree, but we've also been going for 2 hours about
that's
almost
true.
as long as our country's been
okay.
around. So let's.
Yeah, we can finish this here. And besides, half of this can't go on YouTube anyway.
That's all right. You're going to have to cut a
This
lot
is
of
going to have
out.
to be radio and podcast only,
That's all
which
right.
is a good reason for you to subscribe to our podcast.
Well, finally, I think that ultimately we had a spirited debate here, and I think it's good. Places like this and having conversations like this is what makes everyone sharper and what we need to do. And I think that no matter what, we can't be the ones to be the ultimate judge of anyone, let alone other Christians. And I think the best thing we can do as conservative Christians is to, no matter where someone is, keep the door open so that and pray that they see maybe get a glimpse of what you've seen in order to open your heart and mind to things and be ready to catch them when they're ready. But we can have these heated debates. We can smile and we can even say some things to get loud. But at the end of the day, I think in order to try to be that good Christian is to keep your arms and your heart open to bringing them in, but still stand firm on your knowledge and your anointment from God.
All right, rock on. And then Brad, what's yours, dog?
He said it.
Oh, I said mine.
Oh, you already
he
said it.
said
Okay,
it.
cool.
Damn
We're
it,
done.
Carter. He's not paying attention. Who edits this?
Oh, it's me, dude.
Shit,
It's
God,
so...
man. Everything is. I hate this.
Yeah.
Brad, it's a pleasure, buddy. Nice meeting you, my friend.